But let me put this into context. I have to give you credit for showing up. You've been subpoenaed here, showing up on your own recognizance to People's Court of the Black Nation. In this case, the matter of the black community versus the defendant, the white racist media, and Geraldo Rivera. You were indicted here on August 28th and booed by this crowd. And you were indicted on October 16th at the United Nations in New York City and booed then. We are charging you and your co-defendants, the white racist media, with counts of being guilty of attempted lynching of O.J. Simpson, of being guilty, hold on, let me finish my statement, of being guilty of the criminalization and dehumanization of black people, of being guilty of the wrongful death of the black male image, of being guilty of treason, of being guilty of intentional infliction of emotional distress. Everybody here in this audience can agree, Mr. Rivera, that you've gone absolutely O.J. crazy.
The United States of America does not have the moral right to try any black man or black woman in the courts of America. This is a criminal justice system that was established by criminals. It was not the aristocracy of Europe, but it was the dregs and the criminals of Europe. The Thomas Jefferson, the founding fathers, Thomas Jefferson, George Washington, and down the line, all of them owned slaves and were criminals. Every law in the Penal Code of California, every law in the Penal Code of the District in Maryland, and all of the states of the United States was broken by the white man in order to establish that state and this nation. If I poll the audience and ask the audience if the white man committed cold-blooded murder in order to establish the state of California and all of the states, how many would agree? If I poll the audience and ask the audience if the white man violated the penal code of kidnapping, which should be every hand in here should go up because you wouldn't be here at Scripture Cathedral tonight if you hadn't been kidnapped.
All right. I hope that you have all you need to continue your good work. It's a wonderful program, and this is a wonderful institution, and again, I thank you for your hospitality.
Later on, Geraldo, I hope you will let me suggest to you what we need.
I shall, Bishop, I promise. Now let's get to the issue. I list our other panelists in alphabetical order. Christopher Dordan is the longtime Deputy District Attorney for Los Angeles County. He is the author of the bestseller In Contempt, his account of the Simpson case, in which he served, obviously, and as you know, as co-lead prosecutor. Mr. Dordan currently teaches law at Southwestern University in Los Angeles. Minister Khalid Abdul Muhammad is the former national spokesman for the Minister Louis Farrakhan of the Nation of Islam. Dr. Alvin Poussaint is a clinical professor of psychiatry. He is an associate dean at the Harvard Medical School. He is a nationally recognized expert on race relations and the dynamics of prejudice. The attorney Malik Zulu Shabazz, a man I've come to know in the recent weeks and months, chairman of Unity Nation, a black nationalist community-based organization, and a member of a group called Black Attorneys for Justice. E.R. Shipp received this year's Pulitzer Prize for commentary. She writes an opinion column for the New York Daily News. She is an assistant professor at Columbia University Graduate School of Journalism, one of my alma maters. My friend Tavis Smiley, a radio and TV commentator and the host of the late-night program BET Talk. He is the author of the critically acclaimed book Hard Left, and he has been chosen by Time magazine in 1994 as one of its 50 leaders for the future. Chris, let me start with you. The introductions took so long, we only have 3 minutes in the first segment, but let me get right to it. Is it possible to be both scornful of the police, as you are and have stated you are at times, and scornful of the jury's verdict in the case you prosecuted?
Well, I think that you have to try and be objective when one is analyzing such an important case and such an important issue. You know, in this case, the police made mistakes. They have made mistakes before, and they ought to be called on those mistakes. But then, too, once you analyze the mistakes and look at those mistakes, one ought to determine whether or not those mistakes are so serious that it somehow impairs one's ability to see the truth. I have looked at the evidence, and I believe that I know what the truth is. I think the jury was wrong in Los Angeles, but that is the jury's verdict. As you say, Mr. Simpson is free to go and come, say what he wants to say wherever he wants to say it. That is our system.
Malik, I'm going to call everybody by their first names. I give you
Except me.
I give except the R. I call you Ship because you call yourself Ship. Is the way a person feels about the jury verdict in the criminal case the litmus test of whether or not the person is a racist?
Well, let me put this into context. I have to give you credit for showing up. You've been subpoenaed here, showing up on your own recognizance into People's Court of the Black Nation. In this case, the matter of the black community versus the defendant, the white racist media, and Geraldo Rivera. You were indicted here on August 28th and booed by this crowd. And you were indicted on October 16th at the United Nations in New York City and booed then. We are charging you and your co-defendants, the white racist media, with counts of being guilty of attempted lynching of O.J. Simpson, of being guilty, hold on, let me finish my statement, of being guilty of the criminalization and dehumanization of black people, of being guilty of the wrongful death of the black male image, of being guilty of treason, of being guilty of intentional infliction of emotional distress. Everybody here in this audience can agree, Mr. Rivera, that you've gone absolutely O.J. crazy, and you need to check yourself. Let me wrap it up.
I've got a big panel.
Let me state that since you love putting O.J. Simpson on trial, we're going to put you on trial tonight, and if the evidence fits, then we cannot and must not acquit.
Okay. All right. Bishop, as we go to the first commercial break, and then I'll get to our four panelists. Would you like to say something more compassionate about me? All right.
As a gospel preacher, I love everybody.
Me too.
I love you.
Oh, thank you. I love you too.
I love Christopher. Although I do not appreciate you walking off the set the other night when I was on Mr. Smiley's program. And I will talk with you about that afterwards. We came back
I wasn't on the set the other night to walk off the set.
You was on the telephone, sir.
Yes, and I made an arrangement with Mr. Smiley to speak with him for 2 minutes from my home on my all-personal time.
No. Wait. I appreciate a spirited audience. Wait. I appreciate a spirited audience, but don't allow your responses to drown out the answers. That's all.
I respect the bishop.
He does respect them.
I respect the bishop.
I don't understand as a gospel preacher, however, why you're always on O.J.'s case when that trial is over. Why are you still calling him a murderer? Do you really believe that?
Bishop, would you have the same response following the verdict in Simi Valley in which the racist white cops caught on videotape beating poor Rodney King? Do you think that I should have walked away and said the jury in that case has rendered its verdict, therefore I can never speak of this again?
What I'm saying to you, Geraldo, is if the courts acquitted this man, why are you still on his case?
As I said, I will say this now, and maybe I'll have to say it a few times. There was just a man in New York named Antonio Baez, a Puerto Rican man, choked and beaten to death in an incident that had nothing to do with the crime. He was playing football with his brothers. The officer, a man by the name of Lavodi, was accused of choking this man to death. There was a verdict also in that case, Bishop, in which the officer was acquitted, despite eyewitness testimony, despite even another officer saying that indeed the officer had choked him to death. Should I walk away from that case? Should I have walked away from every case in which a black man was wrongfully convicted by a white racist jury, or a white man wrongfully acquitted by a white racist jury in a crime against a black man? A jury's verdict is not the word from the Lord. It is 12 people responding under the laws of the criminal justice system. That is the trial of the century. This is the civil case that has received more attention than any case in civil court in the history of our land, bar none. I am merely expressing my opinion in what I believe the fairest, most balanced program on television. I appreciate that the people here, generally speaking, disagree with me. I am here to ask only one thing. Allow me to have my opinion. Judge me by the sum total of my life and my career. If I'm getting the rap sign. Let me have the rap, and then I go to the rest of the panel. I promise everyone will have an equal amount, and I will not be speechifying. I just will be responding. And I shall return. We are live at the Greater Scripture Cathedral in Washington, D.C. Dr. Alvin Poussant of Harvard, a man who is esteemed around the nation, an advisor to television programs, an expert on racism. What, sir, do you feel the Simpson metaphor has meant to race relations in the country?
Well, the thing that's bothering me now is not O.J. Simpson, which I think we have been talking about and getting stuck on it. But I'm very concerned about a program that's talking about justice for black people. And we have on the program Dr. Khallid Muhammad, who has given some of the most outrageous, crude, gross. You don't have to listen if you want. But understand what we need to do in relationship to ourselves as a people, and understand what Geraldo is doing too in terms of exploitation of this whole event and some of the black leadership in relationship to black people, and then see and try to understand where that puts us, right? How do we appear and how we look? We can't discuss justice for black people when Khallid Muhammad is sitting there, who has said some of the most outrageous anti-Semitic, anti-Catholic things you can imagine on college campuses. He was dismissed by Minister Farrakhan.
Not true, sir.
He was dismissed by Minister Farrakhan, and I've read what he said, and I've seen what he said, and that's my feeling. Listen, Malik, you said no one should interrupt each other, okay?
You said
You said no one should interrupt each other. I'm telling you, he has said the most anti-Semitic. He knows he has. Minister Farrakhan dismissed him because he did. Right? We all know that. And we all know what he's done. I think for us to be talking about human rights for black Americans in this kind of a setting without dealing with that is setting us all up to look a little bit freakish and clownish in relationship to this whole show. And I think it's another form of black exploitation. And I feel about it so strongly, I'm going to walk out of here. Now, you can do what you want to do. Bye-bye. 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 But I'm not staying to be part of
He's afraid that the white folks at Harvard University won't accept
Point, it is not in my defense at all, but it was Malik who kind of was the co-organizer here who invited Mr. Muhammad. He speaks here. This is a free country, and whatever his ideas, you are on, Mr. Muhammad.
The United States of America does not have the moral right to try any black man or black woman in the courts of America. This is a criminal justice system that was established by criminals. It was not the aristocracy of Europe, but it was the dregs and the criminals of Europe. The Thomas Jefferson, the founding fathers, Thomas Jefferson, George Washington, and down the line, all of them owned slaves and were criminals. Every law in the Penal Code of California, every law in the Penal Code of the District in Maryland, and all of the states of the United States was broken by the white man in order to establish that state and this nation. If I poll the audience and ask the audience if the white man committed cold-blooded murder in order to establish the state of California and all of the states, how many would agree? If I poll the audience and ask the audience if the white man violated the penal code of kidnapping, which should be every hand in here should go up because you wouldn't be here at Scripture Cathedral tonight if you hadn't been kidnapped.
Okay. All right.
It seems to me that in my life, and now I'm in my 50s, there has never been an election in which less was said that was relevant to people of color, especially disadvantaged people, than in this election. Are you concerned about that?
I'm not surprised at all. I have, according to factual research and looking at the everyday life of black people, that the Democratic Party nor the Republican Party means any good for the true justice and liberation of black people. One of the greatest dopes in the black community is too much hope in the vote for Clinton or Dole. And I ask all of black America who's watching, are you really better off than you were 4 years ago under Bill Clinton? I don't have any faith, but I do have faith in certain jurisdictions where we can elect a sister like Maxine
You're not telling people not to vote, are you?
I'm telling people not to vote in the presidential election, because I'm telling people that because no black person of character would keep casting their vote for someone who's doing nothing for them.
Dr. Muhammad.
We're taught by the most honorable Elijah Muhammad and the honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan that of all our studies, history is best qualified to reward our research. As we look at the history of the vote, we will find that during Reconstruction, it looked like a period of political prosperity. We were mayors, we were sheriffs, we were in Congress, we were in the Senate. At one point, we even were governor of a particular state. And B.K. Bruce had his signature on all paper money. No matter how racist one was, they had to spend money with the signature of B.K. Bruce. However, there was what was called a white male ego backlash, which is what we're witnessing today. And blacks were then swept from all seats of the Senate and Congress at the whim of white ego. And we were swept from the office of mayor, from sheriff, and that period of political prosperity was erased in the twinkling of an eye. A voter rights bill was passed, a civil rights bill was passed, but then erased. And you had to get a new voter rights bill and a new civil rights bill. How many times will we go around and round in this vicious cycle? Okay. One last point, the Supreme Court has now handed down a ruling that a black voting bloc constituency, that there is now a ruling that it is unconstitutional to have a majority minority
That's true, because
district.
of gerrymandering.